Can great generosity erase the wrongs of the past? Let's travel through the past and find out how a steel empire with harsh business tactics later became a fortune to help society. Andrew Carnegie's story is a classic example of the American dream. Born in Dunfermline, Scotland, his family were weavers barely making ends meet. The Industrial Revolution rendered his father's handloom obsolete, plunging them into poverty. The struggle taught young Andrew about the necessity of adaptability and innovation. In 1848, seeking a better life, the Carnegies emigrated to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Despite their hopes, they faced ongoing financial difficulties. As a teenager, Andrew had to give up his education to help support his family in their new home. He took a job as a bobbin boy in a cotton factory, earning a meager $1.20 a week. But even in these early jobs, Carnegie's drive and intelligence shone through. He quickly learned to operate a telegraph and become a messenger for a telegraph company. It was here that he caught the eye of Thomas Scott, a superintendent of the Pennsylvania Railroad Company who later became his mentor. Carnegie's work ethic and aptitude for business were evident. By the age of 24, he'd risen to the position of superintendent of the Pittsburgh division of the Pennsylvania Railroad, a remarkable achievement for someone who'd started with so little. Steel built America, but what did Andrew Carnegie build to last? But Carnegie didn't stop there. He invested in various ventures, including the Keystone Bridge Company and the Superior Rail Mill and blast furnaces. He had a knack for spotting opportunities and wasn't afraid to take risks. His investments paid off and he soon became a significant figure in the steel industry. He funded the construction of public libraries, universities, and institutions that are still in operation today. His legacy isn't just in the steel that built America, but in the institutions that continue to educate and enrich the public. In the bustling city of Pittsburgh, the telegraph office was a hub of information, and young Carnegie was right in the middle of it. His job required him to deliver messages to businesses throughout the city, which allowed him to meet various business leaders and entrepreneurs. This wasn't just a chance to see the city, it was an opportunity to build a network and learn who was who in Pittsburgh's thriving business community. Carnegie wasn't just another messenger boy, he stood out because of his exceptional memory and knack for Morse code. He could remember not just the messages he delivered, but also the faces and names of the people that he met. His proficiency with Morse code meant he could communicate quickly and efficiently at a time when speed was becoming increasingly important in business. It was these skills that caught the attention of Thomas Scott, a regional manager for the Pennsylvania Railroad Company. Scott saw potential in the young Carnegie and hired him as his telegraph and secretary. This was a significant step up for Carnegie working for Scott. He wasn't just sending messages, he was learning about the railroad business from one of its rising stars. What secret weapon did Andrew Carnegie gain working for Thomas Scott? This job was more than just a paycheck, it was a business education. Carnegie learned about management, logistics, and the importance of efficient communication. He was in the room when decisions were made, and he saw how those decisions affected the company's operations. However, perhaps the most important lesson Carnegie learned from Scott was the value of investment. Scott was an investor himself, and he encouraged Carnegie to invest his earnings rather than just spend them. Carnegie took this advice to heart, and it wasn't long before he started making his investments. He started small, investing in companies that he knew something about, and he used his connections from the telegraph office and the railroad to find opportunities that others may have missed. These investments were the beginning of Carnegie's fortune. During the tumultuous times of the Civil War, Andrew Carnegie was a young man with an eye for opportunity. While many were called to serve, Carnegie, like many of his contemporaries, chose a different path. He paid $850 for a substitute to take his place in the military, a common practice at the time. This decision allowed him to focus on the burgeoning industrial opportunities that the war presented. Carnegie's strategic mind recognized the limitations of wooden bridges, which were vulnerable to fire and decay. He foresaw the growing need for more durable iron bridges, especially as the war strained the nation's infrastructure. With this insight, he founded the Keystone Bridge Company, positioning himself to meet the increasing demand for iron construction. The Keystone Bridge Company wasn't just a business venture, it was a strategic move that placed Carnegie at the forefront of the industrial innovation. The company specialized in the design and construction of iron bridges, which were far superior to their wooden predecessors. These bridges wouldn't only be more durable, but also capable of supporting the heavier loads that were becoming commonplace due to the war. Have you ever wondered how foresight can lead to massive success? Carnegie's strategic investments paid off handsomely. The Keystone Bridge Company landed numerous contracts thanks in part to Carnegie's railroad industry connections. These weren't just for bridges, but also buildings and factories essential to the war effort and America's growing economy. Carnegie didn't stop there, he invested in oil derricks, railroads, and sleeping cars, all carefully chosen to match the era's trends. He also recognized the potential of the Bessemer process, which revolutionized steel production, making it affordable and transforming the industrial landscape. In 1875, he opened his first steel mill, the J. Edgar Thompson Steel Works in Warwick, Pennsylvania. This wasn't just any steel mill, it was a plant that would become the heart of Carnegie's empire. By adopting the Bessemer process, Carnegie could produce steel in large quantities, which was crucial as America was rapidly growing and needed steel for railroads, bridges, and buildings. But Carnegie didn't stop at just producing steel. He was a visionary who understood the importance of controlling the entire production process. This led him to the concept of vertical integration, from raw material extraction to the manufacturing of the finished product. Carnegie's enterprises managed it all. This approach ensured that he had control over the quality, cost, and supply of his products. Carnegie's steel plants were marvels of efficiency and productivity. He built plants around the country using technology and methods that made manufacturing steel easier, faster, and more productive. His focus on innovation and efficiency allowed him to outpace his competitors and dominate the steel industry. Andrew Carnegie's partnership with Henry Clay Frick was a defining moment in the history of American industry. The collaboration was marked by aggressive business tactics that reshaped the steel industry and cemented their position as leaders of the industrial age. Carnegie saw in Frick a like-minded individual with a sharp business acumen. Frick was an industrialist and the founder of the H.C. Frick & Company, a successful coke manufacturing company. When Carnegie and Frick joined forces, they combined their resources and expertise to dominate the steel industry. Their approach to business was uncompromising. They were known to manipulate markets to their advantage and were not above employing aggressive tactics to eliminate competition. One such tactic was spreading false rumors about rival companies. This strategy undermined competitors' credibility and destabilized their market positions, allowing Carnegie and Frick to gain the upper hand. Their ruthless business practices weren't without controversy. Critics labeled them robber barons, a term used to describe those who used exploitative practices to amass their wealth. However, supporters argued that they were captains of industry, visionaries who built America's infrastructure and contributed to its economic growth. The relationship between Carnegie and Frick was complex and often fraught with tension. Both men were fiercely competitive and driven by an insatiable desire for success. This drive led to them making decisions that were sometimes morally ambiguous, but ultimately effective in achieving their goals. One of the most notorious examples of their ruthless tactics was during the Homestead Strike of 1892. The strike was a major industrial action by the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers against the Carnegie Steel Company, which Frick was managing at the time. The conflict turned violent and the strike was eventually quashed, but it left a stain on Carnegie's reputation as a philanthropist and a champion of the working class. Did you know the Homestead Strike challenged the power of steel titans? This intense showdown happened at Andrew Carnegie's Homestead Steel Works in Pennsylvania, where workers were battling wage cuts and poor working conditions. When Henry Clay Frick, acting for Carnegie, hired Pinkerton agents to break the strike, the confrontation turned deadly, resulting in multiple deaths and injuries. This event, known as the Homestead Massacre, highlighted the struggle for workers' rights and dignity. The steelworkers, part of the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers, fought hard for fair pay and safer conditions, but Carnegie's harsh tactics, including using Pinkertons, severely damaged his reputation. Despite this, Carnegie's business savvy remained unmatched. In 1901, he sold his steel company to J.P. Morgan for about $480 million, making him the world's richest man. He then focused on philanthropy, using his fortune to fund libraries, universities, and institutions to better society. Carnegie's post-sale years were a stark contrast to his earlier business practices. He became a champion of education and the arts, leaving a legacy that would last for generations. What do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content.